welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host. What will we go with? Panther Lake Tom. Today I'm joined by my co-host.
UDNA Dan. I don't know if that's too far in the future to use it, but
UDNA is. We'll get to what graphics are coming out next year. I do think there's some people that are a little too optimistic on when RDNA 5 is coming out, but no, I do not believe UDNA will be coming out next year. So
hear me out. RDNA 4 in March, RDNA 5 in July.
You mean in January? So no, now that's in March too.
Oh, yes, sure. And UDNA we get in December 31st. I think
that makes sense to me. Yeah. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
No, but of course, this is the final end of year episode where we are looking forward to 2025. We'll be talking about, of course, informed by the reader mail submitted by patrons. What we're most excited for, which product, what we're hoping out of the products. Of course, remember when you're listening to this will have been recorded, a little over a week before it came out. So we're not going to focus on exact price, exact performance specs of a project. What do we generally expect out of these things, and what are we hoping for them? Now, before we get to that, though, there is actually a decent amount more news than I expected this December. And because of that, I thought it would be ridiculous if we didn't comment on some of the things that developed over the holiday break. And so because I think I want to get our reactions to them while they're more recent. So people don't hear us go, oh yeah, that happened. But also so that when we do the first news episode of the year, which by the way, Dan, will be the one right after CES, I don't think we'll need to cover 4 weeks of news, including one of them being a CES week. Let's get to some of this now. So yeah, it'll be a bit informal, but I think we can talk about them now because they're just kind of set in stone. So the PS5 Pro, more sales data came out. Maybe more will come out by then. Probably not though. And it has so far now 12% lower sales than the PS4 Pro, but 50% higher revenue. Also interesting, 19% of PlayStation sold, I believe they said, since it's come out, have been PS5 Pros, which is a higher proportion than it was PS4 Pro.
I think that means that the PS6 is probably $700, but the PS5 Pro, I think, was generally pretty well reviewed, and I guess people that think that there's a lack of desire for it, we're wrong.
Yeah. And there's definitely some corrections for us. I think I expected okay sales.
I would not have. I would not.
But this
have
is more than
this.
I expected for sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people that thought it was going to fail. Well, actually, no. I fluctuated between thinking it would be okay or excellent. So I guess it's kind of close to what I expected, but I didn't expect it to be 19%. It's almost a fifth of the sales. So that seems to indicate to Sony as well that this is a more important part of the portfolio than the PS4 Pro was, despite what people expected. And also this is, the things people test. Like, I know it sucks that the price is higher, but if you go, well, less people will buy PlayStations or less people will buy Lovelace. Yeah, but if these companies see we'll sell 10% less cards or 10% less GPUs, but we'll make 50% more money. Well, then we'll just have less market share.
Yeah, and I do think the good side of the sales thing, though, is or the pricing thing is it really doesn't seem like this is that susceptible to scalpers. Like it seems to mostly be like I'm looking right now. One
of the biggest silver linings was the burning of scalpers. Yes.
Yeah, it seems to generally be hovering in the $700 to $800 territory. I'm skeptical on if those PS5 Pro 30th edition $4,000 ones were real or if that was just the bidder bidding on it over and over again to increase
I could see
the price.
Those selling those packages for $2,000.
Yeah,
I just can't see anyone's really buying these in any real numbers above 3.
No, it doesn't seem like they are. So the good news is for Sony and I guess people that buy it, $700 seems to be the price people will buy it at, and they won't go $1 for higher.
Right. So I guess that's true. That is a silver lining we could take away from the Pro's success is that it is staying in stock. It's like this isn't necessarily indicating to Sony that $800 should be the price. Like it might be $700,
Yeah,
and people don't want you to get rid of physical media. The disk drive is actually what scalpers should have bought because that's what's selling above MSRP. And again, that will indicate to Sony, oh, people don't want us to completely get rid of disks, which I think is a good thing.
Yep. There are good things and bad things about it. I would have been a lot happier to see it at $600, but we can't have everything.
Can't have everything. We'll take what we can get in 2024. That's and moving into 25. I think.
I'm curious if just 600 is a cursed price for a PlayStation product. For Sony.
I know that it was the cursed price of the PS3. All right. So another thing that developed over the holiday season, Sony bought 10% of Kadokawa. I assume is how you say it. And at first, I wasn't sure what to make of this. Of course, rumors were swirling around for a while that Sony was looking to buy From Software to get access and control over all of their IP. Then rumors came out that they're not interested in selling the whole they're not interested in just selling From Software, so they better have the money for the whole thing. What did you make of this when you saw that they bought 10% of it? Because I was like, I'm gonna have to think about that.
It sounds like. It just based on the story I'm reading, it really just sounds like this was a security thing for the Japanese government that needed to happen. And
like what? Can elaborate?
Well, I mean, I think they wanted it to be impossible for a company to own more than 50% of the company. So Sony buying 10% makes it impossible for like an international company to get a majority stake in it.
And that's the interesting thing. Carbon Cry, who of course helps write the notes for these podcasts, said that from what he was seeing, it seems like Kadokawa was in financial trouble to the point that they did some stuff that got them in trouble with Japan's FTC. And then it was the sign of an illiquid company. So Sony could do a total buyout and then sell off the nonsense and keep what they want, mainly gaming and stuff. But then at the same time, there's another option here, which is that they, like you said, Carbon Cry also concluded that they wanted to prevent someone else from getting over half of Kadokawa's control of the company, over half of the company. And there was also some weird thing I believe Karen Sugata brought up of like Kadokawa, South Korea might try to buy out the Japanese. Might try to buy it. So like it kind of seems like this is Sony making sure they have some say in the future of these IPs that are so important to PlayStation, but also making sure this doesn't become like a Korean company or something. That's what this all seems like to me.
Japanese corporations are weird to me. I feel like there's like Japan's corporate structure is just 5 giant holding companies.
Yes,
in some ways. But I don't know. Here's my real prediction, Tom. This is the hint that we're getting a Bloodborne remake. That's
right.
Why they did
we're getting the Vaunt, and you know what? Also the Metal Gear Solid remake, of course, that everyone told me was happening. Everyone told Colin at Sacred Symbols, who's very good source. He's friends with Neil Druckmann at Naughty Dog. And no one knows what's going on. Why you wouldn't do that? I would make so much money. I don't. But
the Bloodborne subreddit is a permanent people coping that the remake doesn't exist.
I know. I think it probably will. I don't know. I certainly thought it would be sooner if it ever did.
Well, Sony likes teasing that it will be a thing. Like in their last promotional video, I can't remember what it was. I think it was the 30th anniversary thing. They showed Bloodborne at the very end. So you'd think something is coming, but
they just like murdering the hopes. Can we not have Sony push From Software for a patch for PS5? Something.
Hear me out. What if in the next remake they do is The Last of Us Part 1 again for the PS5 Pro?
Well, there's the giant teaser, and they what if they show Bloodborne gameplay for a minute, and then they just announce a Last of Us remaster? Do it. Let us move on to another story that just developed over the holiday season that actually is big news, I believe, and that's Project Amethyst, which is a joint machine learning initiative between AMD and Sony for graphics. Basically, from what I'm reading here, they're working on making libraries and architectures that are conducive to machine learning, like making sure it can do that in ray tracing well. And a lot of people are pointing at that. Mark Cerny, and I believe this has also come out since I started putting the notes together, has just basically said Yeah, look, PlayStation 6 is probably going to use UDNA. It's going to have extensive machine learning and AI capabilities, and the focus will be on a very powerful CPU and AI. And they'll be like, because I believe there was an interview where it's like, well, we won't say what's in that, but we would say it might be more likely to use like, and now he just openly said, yeah, it's going to be all about AI and, making sure the CPU can do incredible things. Because they don't see graphics as being as important this time around, besides making sure ray tracing gets to where it needs to get.
I mean, that all makes sense. We've speculated like a ton about what you could potentially do with machine learning beyond just like ray tracing. So, Sony leaning hard into that. It would be interesting. Like somebody was talking about this in the notes or a question about that. It would be kind of cool to see more novel uses, like for like speech or character generation stuff, if they could use machine learning for that. And I don't know, Sony leaning hard into machine learning for their next thing makes a lot of sense. Ray tracing, at least, isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. Jensen Wang, not anti-competitive, writes in and says, is Sony the reason we're getting UDNA and Project Amethyst? It's funny, because what I was told by people at AMD months ago is that, yes, there's PSSR. Yes, AMD has been working on FSR4 for like a year or something. But that PSSR really, and yes, there's some knowledge sharing between AMD and Sony, but that it is not that Sony just took FSR and said, we'll make our version from this. They certainly looked at it, but that PSSR was its own thing they developed and then sent that as a package to AMD to help with FSR4. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a decent chance here that like Sony is a big part of pushing AMD to get its act together with FSR, not the other way around. I really think that.
Yeah, I could believe that.
I mean, I think they're helping. This is a way that PlayStation helps PC gamers.
I definitely think Sony, yeah, like you said, is helping with the development, or I shouldn't say it that way. Them being such a big partner with AMD definitely one lights a fire under their ass to keep developing their architectures, because it's just such a big client. But I think we would still see new graphics cards from them if Sony weren't there, because there's a lot of money to be made with graphics cards, and they're one of the companies that's the best at it.
Yeah, but you could say like what, half of AMD's gaming is PlayStation at this point, if not most. And so Sony's like, hey, we're going to work together, AMD, because we need you to keep doing this. And we will, and frankly, we're half of your gaming revenue. So, if not most, certainly most. So we get a say in how RDNA and UDNA develop because it's being built for us.
Well, it's being built for us, and it's also being built for data centers, because this is a unified architecture now, though. So that's another huge portion of the market. Now, I guess Sony at that very least, though, then forces the UDNA to remain a competitive gaming architecture.
Mm-hmm. But while making sure it has the machine learning functions they think are important to gaming.
Yeah.
Like, I think, is Sony the reason we're getting UDNA? No, there's very good reasons to do that. For just having a unified architecture. So again, like this thing I've said a million times of like, if the 7900 XTX doesn't sell well in gaming, that sucks for AMD a ton, because they can't just easily sell it in AI. Like if 4090s don't sell well, Nvidia's like, whatever, we'll make them into AI cards and sell those instead. And so AMD was always going to probably unify the architecture after seeing the success of how Nvidia built kind of AI first, but still found a way to use it for gaming effectively. And that really has worked out well for them. But I think the more gamery focus, making sure that they don't do the minimum when it comes to upscaling tech and stuff. Yeah, I think Sony's probably the reason why we're getting that to a degree.
Well, I mean, Sony's version of super sampling is the best you can get on AMD right now. So they're definitely pushing them in some ways.
I forgot which game it was. There was some game that just got updated or something, and they're like, it matched DLSS. Like,
yeah,
like some of them don't. There's definitely been some issues. Like, I think, what was it? Silent Hill 2 or whatever that remake was, like had bad PSSR implementation or something. But there's like a couple games that just came out, and they're like, dude, after this update, it matches DLSS 3.8 or whatever quality. Like, this is crazy or something. At least in that gamer. All right, let us move on to another thing here that is recent news. And this was something pointed out by Kerry No Sugata, a contributor to Moore's Law is Dead, that I thought was very interesting. There's been all of these new RAM kits announced. One of them here, I note from Lexar, that focuses on low latency. So like DDR5 6000 driving for ultra low latency so that it's extra good for AMD systems, which want better latency more than they want faster speeds.
The speed, I should say.
And Kerry pointed out, wait, this is a huge deal. This signals that RAM companies are building kits for AMD before Intel finally. That's such a mindshare indication. Like,
yeah, that's a good read between the lines there, and makes sense. Why the hell would you build a gaming system with Intel in this day and age? Like, top to bottom, I don't think there's a single Intel CPU I would recommend at any price point right now. Like,
I could do the Alder Lake i5s for $130. That's a good deal.
Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
You know? And I'm sure we'll find like, oh, this Raptor Lake i7 is, $200 or something. Sure, I'll get behind that or whatever.
Yeah, and that's not to say there aren't certain ones that could be at a good price at some point, but AMD really does run it from like $200 to $700, and AMD still has some pretty cheap CPUs that are also an option. Like,
so not like the 5700
like
X3D.
Yeah,
which is an 8-core even.
Well, yeah, the 5700 X3D, that's a little over 200 right now, I think. But
I've seen it below. Just who knows when this comes out where exactly it's at.
Yeah, I shouldn't put a hard number. Who knows? Maybe it's Amazon's algorithm puts it at 170 tomorrow.
or like when this comes out, it's $400. You guys always lie. But yeah, I mean, that's, if you think about it, though, these companies probably just saw the writing on the wall. They're like, well, Arrow Lake is cancer for gaming performance, for the fact that it's a 3-nanometer architecture that's supposed to be cutting edge. Every gamer is going to get the 9800 X3D. It's time to build our RAM kits and our marketing around AMD as the main gaming CPU, because that's what people are going to buy. I mean, Arrow Lakes, Intel may not catch up to the 9800 X3D until 26. So it's time to start building RAM kits that benefit AMD and AMD-centric ideas and design. So yeah, wow, what a sign of the times.
I do hope people notice that when they're building their systems and don't just buy the thing with the fastest number on the front of it, though.
We'll see. Intel terminates x86S, and this was interesting to me because it did remind me of Royal Core, where I heard they were playing around with different future versions of x86 as part of Royal Core. Compressed AI Blocks writes, and it says, was x86S killed due to resource allocation or because, well, debloating, it would be nice, it's not entirely needed. So Carbon Cry's note to this was x86 was about security, but it was extensive, would break some backwards compatibility to old programs. Yep. AMD had their own proposal that closed most of the same security surfaces while not hurting backwards compatibility. So different way to skin a cat that saves them money. So again, just a sign of the debloating, trying to do a million things that probably you could be spending money better on somewhere else. But I thought I had to bring this up as well, because this just reminded me, I was told Royal Core was going to use some future version of x86 eventually that lost some backwards compatibility features, and them killing this off. Again, there it is. Royal Core is dead, people.
Well, and breaking compatibility is quite a big thing to do. That's kind of x86's whole thing. Is backwards compatibility. So I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm not opposed to it at a certain point, but if you can keep going without breaking it, probably should.
All right, let us now move on to some more general reader mails about 2025. Compressed AI Blocks writes, and again, it says, any specific hardware you guys are looking forward to in 2025? For me, it's low-end RDNA 4 and probably more APUs from AMD. They've been on a roll in mobile. I'll let you go first.
Specific piece of hardware I'm most excited to see. I think it's Strix Halo, but we've been talking about that forever, and it's almost just like the end of a arc in our channel, to be honest.
The Strix Halo arc. Yeah. I think I agree too. But honestly, there's a lot of stuff I'm excited for next year. I'm kind of excited to see the Switch 2. Just because, I know my girlfriend wants it, so I know I'll get to use it and check it out. also just because I cannot. It's like Strix Halo. I mean, good lord, the first Super Switch leaks that I was putting out, I believe, were also mid to late 21, and then we were talking about it extensively with weeks all 24 and the year. No, and I think I even had a leak about it like the year before that touched on it, and it's like, finally, we'll get to see what it is.
I know. I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited for there to not be any more speculation and wondering where the hell the Switch 2 is or Super Switch is, because wow, what a long release cycle, or what a long cycle it's been that the Switch 2 should have come out like 2 years ago. And I guess the original Nintendo Switch is just going to turn out to be a full like 8-year generation almost.
Yeah, it will.
Like I always thought it would only last like maybe 5 years, but nope, they're going the full way. And I would really love to know why it took them so long to get it out, but I doubt that will ever be public knowledge.
It might, stuff emerges. My answer is simply, well, we'll see. Maybe they die shrunk to Samsung 7 nanometer or something weird.
Yeah, hopefully it could surprise us.
Maybe there is some reason. I think it's just they were milking it and they wanted some specific game to be ready. That's kind of what I'm guessing. And as long as they have Switch supply and it's selling, they have no reason. And they had a bunch of games still to come out on Switch. They wanted to come out with no sequel yet to offload the rest of their volume. That's what I think.
And my prediction for that game is Animal Crossing. People will lose their minds if it's Animal Crossing.
My girlfriend will definitely buy it on release day if it has that. She still plays it all the time while we're watching TV. All right. So let's get to the Switch 2 question now then, since we're talking about it. Trevor Renfro writes in and says, I'm definitely looking forward to the Switch 2/Super Switch. That's what it should be called, I think. Whatever it goes by. I didn't buy the Switch 1 original as it didn't really interest me for years. And there was a lot of talk about the next generation coming before much longer by the time I found it interesting. Seriously, it was early this year that I started finding it interesting. Yeah, I'm actually a little in the same boat where I saw they were remastering Thousand Year Door. I kind of thought it looked interesting a year ago, but then when I looked it up, it was like still $250. And I'm like, no.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that annoys me, is it's just not for $250. It's just, there are a couple games I wouldn't mind playing on it, but it's just too expensive at that.
Mm-hmm. So he goes, hopefully the Switch 2 or Super Switch will be better able to run higher end games, given even Hogwarts Legacy tends to make the current generation struggle. Yeah, actually, and I did recently over the weekend look up Hogwarts Legacy on Switch. And yeah, it doesn't look good, but it actually kind of impressed me. It looked as good as it did, to be honest. And like you can even fly on a broom in it. So
I completely forgot that they launched Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch, although
they're going an extra half year to optimize it. But yeah.
I mean, that I'm assuming there's a big market on the Switch too for Hogwarts Legacy. Although, yeah, probably.
Yes, there is. But anyways, though, I think this is an interesting question. Like, how will it handle the generation? Will the Switch 2 age as well? And here's my opinion. I think for its time, the Switch 2 will be perceived as not being as janky as the Switch was for its time. But I do think that this time around, the CPU is going to heavily limit what games will run on it eventually, not the RAM. I mean, in RAM, they've kind of done what they needed to. If you think about it, the Switch had not enough RAM, and the PS4 and Xbox had, most people say, maybe a little more than enough RAM. Right, so the PS5 is double the RAM of the PS4. Well, the Switch 2 is going to have quadruple the RAM of the Switch 1. So I think they caught up to where they need to be in RAM. I think their GPU, I know it's probably equivalent to about an RTX 2050, and a lot of people are going to say that's not good enough. Docked mode might even be stronger than that. And a lot of people will say that that's not good enough. But I think that's enough. I mean, look what they've done with 256 Maxwell CUDA cores.
Oh, Jesus.
My concern is the CPU, the fact that it's more comparable to the Steam Deck, which is a quad-core Zen 2, which I think is still probably stronger than the CPU that's going to be in the Switch 2. If you had to make me choose which one's better, I think they're probably comparable overall, strengths and weaknesses here and there, But if that's where it is, that's what's going to hold it back late this gen is the CPU
Yeah.
is going to be really weak. And so again, I think when it comes out, it'll be perceived as better than the Switch was for the time. But I think people are going to forget that the original Switch actually was probably the strongest handheld for the time because its competitor were Atom laptops, like flip open GPD laptops that were just crazy weaker. And I think over time that CPU is going to be a struggle. The devs are going to be on the struggle bus with that CPU. But again, short term, I think better than this Switch. That's how it will be perceived for its time. But ultimately, long term, I think it's going to run into issues, just different ones.
Yeah, it would be really nice if there were 6 or 8 cores on that thing, but I think that's a lot of power for asking Nintendo to put on a system.
No, I think it has enough cores. They're just not very fast. I think it might have 10 cores, 8 cores, 10 cores. They'll be fine.
But
they're just like 2 gigahertz like single threaded weak boy cores.
Okay. Yeah,
to my memory, I don't have the specs up next to me.
To me, Nintendo, they just don't really care about power that much because they're in their own mostly closed off ecosystem, and that's been successful for generations at this point. Across a couple generations at this point with the blemish of the Wii U. But I don't know. I don't think you need a 2070 to run the next Mario or Zelda game, and that's the calculation they're making. And yeah, at the end of the generation, there are probably going to be some games that have issues, but at least early on, they'll probably...
I do think there will be less issues than last time.
And there will be enough games, AAA games from third-party studios that it won't really matter. I think they'll get plenty, if not most of them, at least early on.
And again, at launch, I think the Switch 2 has more RAM than the Series S, has a graphics card that's, I don't think quite as good as the Series S, but certainly stronger than the Steam Decks. And so from that perspective, a lot of devs, you know what? I think
it would be funny if it had fewer issues than the Series S.
I think long term it's going to run into CPU issues, but actually, I think it will get more AAA game support through its life because I think there's going to be. Tell me if you agree with this argument. More games are GPU and RAM limited than they are likely to be CPU limited. Yeah, it's going to run at 30 frames per second. Okay, it will. But I think there will just be some games like Cyberpunk 2. Yeah, look, the CPU is not strong enough. But there will be more AAA games that don't really need much of a CPU that will be run on it actually just fine. So I do think it will age better because I think it is better thought out than the original Switch.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think short term it'll run pretty much every game at least at 30 frames a second. So let me move on to this question here. Richard P writes in, I am full of optimism about lots of 2025 tech promises being broken again. Thank you both for your content. It really makes my weeks shorter when I'm on the road a lot. This 24 was a year of broken promises for some stuff. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how handhelds evolve in 2025. The Legion Go 2 looks super impressive, and the SteamOS support is such a great move and should save the MS license cost, which of course you don't have to pay too much for. It's cdkoffer.com, everybody. But on this note, I think handhelds, and we talked about this on the Die Shrink. Of course, you guys get access to support us on Patreon. Like we said, 2024 felt like the year of the mini PC. I think handhelds and Steam machines and like smaller companies like Minis Forum making laptops, GPD making handheld stuff, this is going to really be a thing to watch next year because I think we're going to see some real challenges and more like, as Xbox seemingly starts to fall apart, it's going to be like, and I think this is what I said a year ago or so. If that happens, I don't think we need to worry too much. I think short term, Sony will be able to charge more, like the PS5 Pro. But long term, what will happen is their pie will get smaller and Nintendo will eat some of that pie. Boutique people, Lenovo with the Legion will eat some pie. Steam will eat some pie. And what we'll have is a bunch of smaller players eating up into what Xbox was trying to do. And I think some of them are really going to light a fire under the asses of OEMs and PlayStation to a degree. So I think I agree. I'm really excited to see where SteamOS and like boutique game consoles goes because I think we could actually get the competition we were looking for from them anyways.
Oh yeah, like I think with SteamOS, I could easily see at least one of those smaller PC makers. I don't know, try to put out their own little Steam box. I mean, really, like some of those mini forums, I'm not saying they'll just install SteamOS on it from the get-go. But if you get one of those and just throw a SteamOS on it, that might be a decent gaming box.
Mhm.
There's a lot of options, and I'm very curious to see what the next line that uses like Strix or Lunar Lake for handhelds will look like.
Mm-hmm. And, actually, let's move into this subject. Let me see here. Actually, here's one. Zach J writes in, with Steam now on ChromeOS. Oh, I didn't know that. Could ChromeOS or Android start to become a real Microsoft alternative? My one word answer is no, but I will say this recently. Again, I believe this was on a die shrink. Me and you were like, well, how successful is AMD really in laptop right now? And when we looked on Amazon best-selling laptops, there's a ton of MacBooks, but like a lot of Chrome OS, or like I was like Chromebooks, and I'm like, oh, I mean, no one I know owns one, and I don't like them because I just want to be able to do everything. But certainly, they're popular. So look, were that to be able to run most games on Steam, yes, heck, I'd consider getting it if it could run the apps I need to edit. I just want it to work, Microsoft.
And Google has a lot of money, and I'm sure they would love to be the new home for Steam gaming. So, sure, I could see that happening. I would like to see like how compatibility is right now, because until compatibility is there with games, there's no reason to migrate over, or no one should migrate over.
Mm-hmm. Dark Helmet writes in, what do you think 2025 holds for Microsoft Game Pass? Their games coming to other platforms, and Phil Spencer? Well, so look, they've announced that basically everything's coming to PlayStation and PC and like at whatever platforms they can bring them to. I'm sure, including Switch too. Like at this point, like some games won't, because they just were developed for 5 years for the Xbox and they just don't have the money or the time to bother. But I think next year is where it's going to be obvious that Xbox is slowly turning into like Sega. Like it is.
Yeah. And with Game Pass, I don't know if there will be any movement on Game Pass next year. I mean, they did a restructuring this year, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, the milking of the existing fans.
So I don't know, maybe a like $5 price increase could happen, but that's the most I would guess. And as far as Phil Spencer goes, I have a hard time believing that his position at the company is super solid right now. And like I said, I think on our last news episode, I found it interesting that the CEO of Microsoft as a whole, Satya Nadella, gave the last update on on Xbox, and not Phil Spencer. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into something.
I don't think you are.
I think there's something there to that.
Yeah, so I think we're going to slowly see Xbox become more just a brand that they don't talk about as much. And I think Game Pass, they're just going to, I think I agree. I think it's going to be there. They don't want to just kill it. But what they will probably do is find more ways to up the prices for it and see if they can get away with it and make it stable. They're going to try to stabilize Game Pass, probably get rid of Phil. And they're going to become like Sega. That's what we think.
Yeah.
But let us move on to this subject here, since we're kind of talking about new entrants to the market. The Nvidia APU. Did that surprise? I mean, like, what are you hoping for out of Nvidia entering CPU?
I don't know. Because I remember when I saw this one at first, I was like, wait, really? I mean, I suppose it was going to happen at some point. I'm expecting a mid-range kind of weak CPU gaming
for gaming
GPU.
At least.
Yeah, for gaming. It will have some compatibility issues, but I don't know. I think it'll do better than what Qualcomm's first attempt at ARM, Windows on ARM. I always get that backwards.
I mean, for me, I can just tell you what I hope. I hope they actually do surprisingly go for budget gaming. Like, that comes out and it's $1,000. They're like, this is the Nvidia laptop. It runs all of your games, or 99%, at, like a 4070 laptop or 4060 Ti, which means, it's like PS5 performance in a $1,000 notebook. The CPU is not the strongest, but it has a really good NPU. It's really efficient. This is what you were hoping the X Elite would be, plus extra gaming. And because we know the way to muscle into this is probably through gaming, because that's our strongest brand, that we're going to, target the $1,000, $1,200 market, and therefore light a fire under AMD's ass with Strix Halo pricing. That's what I hope, and I think it could happen. It should be noted that I'm not sure this is coming out next year. It might just come out 26 at CES. That's when I give it 50-50. That's what happens or something. But I do know they're trying to launch it next year, which I was like, really? That seems quick. But they want this out now. Which actually, on that note, Sakosha writes in, why is everyone trying to muscle into the laptop market? Is it really that profitable? Judging from Intel, they barely make any money, and that's like their last big market. Well, so Carbacry wrote in, yes, and they're making less money in server. Intel's problems are largely Intel's problems, not problems with the market itself, which, Intel always claims that. They're just like, well, due to market headwinds, NVIDIA just hit an all-time high.
Due to market headwinds of our silicon being trash.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, why is everyone trying to muscle into laptop? Because the market leader of consumer laptop is falling apart, and Microsoft's trying to make ARMs on Windows viable. The floodgates are open. Everyone wants a piece of that pie, and that's why it's happening.
There's a power vacuum in the market, and a ton of people are going, or companies are going to compete to try to get into that market, especially given that Microsoft is incentivizing those competitors to enter the market.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think you see NVIDIA rushing it. They're like, oh, we got to get it as quick as possible. Compressed AI Blocks writes in, does the NVIDIA APU exist as another way for Intel and or AMD to not be able to fully lock NVIDIA out of the laptop market? I'd say that's a plus.
With a 40 CU APU, that really does shake up the entire market as it exists on laptops. And NVIDIA does need an answer to that if they want to be able to hold more of the 50 level performance market and not just hold the 4080 and the 90 and 80 market, which I doubt many people buy those.
Yeah, the bulk of their laptops are 50 and 60 laptops, and they know AMD could get close to locking them out of the sub 60 market.
Yeah.
Yoda King writes in, hey, Tom and Dan, I'm sure this has been asked before, but NVIDIA is in the next step for them to start making and design their own CPU. But for NVIDIA is the next step for them to start making and design their own CPUs to grow as a company. Well, that's certainly they've conquered graphics, they've conquered AI. And Intel's falling apart. So again, there's a power vacuum. The next thing is CPU. And it just makes sense. The first step being laptop APUs, but I think this will be the basis, mostly off the shelf ARM cores. They'll innovate, hire better CPU engineers. If they get good reviews for their first lineup, the next one will be a more custom core. And then I think you'll see 27, they'll try to launch a desktop chip. I think so.
Yeah, that's a plausible timeline. If it gets good reviews, I could
maybe
see
28,
that.
But yeah.
But yeah, 28, maybe they'll actually go for a high performance CPU. And who knows? Then NVIDIA has the entire market in their hands. Yeah, obviously this is mostly what MediaTek's cores this time around, so I don't think we'll see a truly NVIDIA CPU until, like you said, 2028 or 2029.
Well,
maybe 27 if things go fast.
But I think it'll be like an APU. It still wouldn't be like they're ready to take on Zen 7 head-to-head.
Oh, yeah. That's not going to happen for a while, I don't think.
Endless Logins writes in and says, with the Arc B580 being a runaway success, when will NVIDIA beg Intel to put Arc stickers on their GPUs? Because if you read the comments, it seems like the B580 is definitely more popular than NVIDIA, right? Which is a sarcastic. I thought it was a funny joke. Yes, I know. If you read the comments, you'd think that NVIDIA is about to go out of business with the cards that don't even show up on Amazon bestsellers. But
Tom, the tens of people that bought it love it.
I'm sure they do, unless they're playing the handful of games that are recent releases that don't work. But joking aside, what are you hoping for out of Blackwell? We have to talk about this.
I hope they keep the pricing generally where it is now and they don't push the envelope by going another $100 up in every market segment. And I hope the 5090 stays below 2200.
Yeah.
I think we know about where performance is going to be, so all of my hopes are pricing related.
I have to agree. I think everything comes down to pricing. I have no doubt they'll have some new version of DLSS, some neural thing, some new way of adding AI into rendering that will be awesome and look great and cause AMD to say, also, we totally have that coming out soon, TBD.
Yeah, we also have Super DLSS coming out. We didn't just throw this on the slide 5 minutes before we came out.
Yeah, like with what was it? FSR 3, yeah. Fluid frames. But yeah, I mean, I think, and of course, the last video I put out of the year, I believe, unless somehow another video came out before this, who knows, was talking about how I made this argument. Like, I looked at the cost of just RAM and the silicon difference between the 4090 and 5090. And I'm like, based on that alone, we're not even talking about if the cooler, the board's more expensive, the fact that shipping rates are up. That alone makes it close to a linear increase to like $2,000. And I think my suspicion is if they make it $2,000, it's because they'll go something like, again, I'm using this because it's round numbers. It's 50% faster than the 4090. And yes, it's, whatever it is, like 25% more expensive or something, but 1.5 divided by that, 20% better price performance. They'll just kind of go down the stack and be like, yep, it's the $1,200 5080 or $1,300, whatever it is, but it is, this percent faster than that, 20% better price performance besides the 5070 and 5070 Ti, because those need to compete with RDNA 4. That's my guess on what they're going to do. And if they do that, I guess that's better than what they tried to pull with Lovelace, where price performance got worse.
Or they'll look at the most expensive 4090 on the market and say, actually, it's double price performance.
I doubt that, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was $2,500.
I am also curious with Blackwell in general. Are they going to try to cook the numbers as much as they did last time? Well,
I don't know if you saw, there was some leak out of Inno3D or someone, I don't remember who said they were talking about neural rendering. Now, they might just be saying that because, it's neural rendering. But who knows, Dan? Who knows what they're going to try to do? Like if half of the frame's interpolated and just like, but if they do, I'll be fascinated to see how that pans out.
This wasn't for gaming, but we've talked about this before. My favorite NVIDIA image is them showing that how rapidly their AI is scaling, and they changed the precision on the graph.
So right. They used less precise. It wasn't even linear. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we agree. Look, Blackwell will be very strong. Blackwell will be very efficient. Blackwell will be better at ray tracing than Lovelace per raster performance. And I'm sure the 512-bit 32 gigabyte 5090 will be powerful. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, are they going to go as crazy with pricing as we think they could? That's it. That's what we're hoping for. We have no doubt it'll be powerful. It's NVIDIA. Of course it will. Mark Smith writes in, will NVIDIA continue to make apps or features in the forthcoming generation of RTX cards the previous generation are not able to use? Thank you for a great year of PC content. Keep up the good work. Thank you. We will try. What do you think, Dan? Are they gonna have some feature they gatekeep from Lovelace?
My guess is maybe like DLSS 4.0 could be, but I don't know why it would be locked. And I don't know what other new big tech they could introduce, like frame generation. That
I don't want to say what I've heard of something like some new IP block, but I don't have any proof, so I'm not,
If there's a new IP block, sure, I could imagine
that does something to help with neural rendering. Yeah. So I'm kind of 50-50, but I guess gun up to my head, I think so. Don't sue me if they don't, but I'll be pleasantly surprised if they don't. But I just feel like there's going to be something that only Blackwell can do, because it worked for them before. Why not?
Yeah.
Let me see. So, all right, we're on the graphics train. Let us continue that actually then by just swapping on over here to RDNA 4. XPK 200402228 writes in. It says, will AMD not fuck up another launch for RDNA 4?
I'm not.
You go first.
I'm never willing to make a bet on if AMD won't fuck up a launch because they really like doing it for some reason. Actually, never mind. I'll take if I have to bet, I'll take it. They'll do something stupid to make the
guns
card
up
look
to your
worse.
head. You think they'll do something dumb?
Yeah, that'll make people either they'll sandbag for some reason and make deflate excitement, or they'll do the weird up to thing again, and everybody's like, well, this honestly, this seems like you're lying more than Nvidia just like saying it's 4 times stronger now. Like, this almost feels like more lying, because what you're doing is like within the realm of possibility and what makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know how to take what you mean ever. And actually, that's kind of the problem with AMD these days is AMD needs to not do that for a couple launches for people to not have that perception. So no matter what, that's going to be the perception when they unveil it. And then on review day, we'll either be slightly disappointed or slightly impressed.
I would go as far as to say that even if it's not misleading, like even if they say up to, I don't know what it would be, up to, 40% more up to 20% more performance than the XTX, and it ends up actually being 10 to 15% on average. Don't say up to. Like, it doesn't matter if it's fair and how you portray it. I would just not have a slide that says up to, unless it's like 1 out of 4. Like, here's the average performance. Here's the performance in this actual game. We didn't mess with the numbers. And look, yeah, in remote scenarios, it can get up to 90%. That's not on average. That would be okay. But if all they show is up tos, even if it turns out to not be misleading, even if they're sandbagging, that is dumb. No more up to for you, AMD, for at least a few gens.
Okay, but what if what the marketing team is getting from all of this data is we need to stop saying up to, let's replace it with as much as.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, if they remove AMD, if they don't have any up to slides, I will be a lot more confident in whatever they're presenting. So I really hope
or if they do, again, it's like 1 out of 3 and they're like clear about it. Yeah.
I would much rather see like a 20 game benchmark compared to like a 7900 XT or something. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm hoping to see.
Ice Bear writes in and says, have you heard anything about RDNA 4 besides the 8800 XT? When talking about RDNA 4, it's been almost exclusively the top die that's been discussed. And with Intel's B580, it would be interesting what AMD plans for the far lower end 8600 series. So, yeah, I have. I'm a little concerned. Like, I put out a leak a long time ago about Navi 48. I was talking about, was it 48? Is it 44? The small one, I'm already forgetting.
44 is the small one, right?
I think so. I think.
Okay.
Well, you know what, Dan?
That's my memory.
Yeah. Okay. 44 is the small one. Yes. That's not always true, because 31 was the big one. But yeah, I mean, I remember being told confidently by people at AMD and Nvidia, who often know more than some people at AMD about what they're making, because they must just have amazing Oppo research over there. But that this was going to be a 128-bit card aiming to maybe go for like 7700 XT performance. I have seen rumors that it's 192-bit, so I'm not sure anymore. Like, there's a part of me that goes, well, the 8800 XT, I was told this, started out as a 192-bit card, and then when they canceled big RDNA 4, they turned it into 256-bit. So I'm going to kind of stay away from the specs on this one, because this is coming out, before they confirm it. There's no point anymore. But look, I think from what I'm hearing, the performance goals are still pretty much there. Like, this is going to be stronger than a 7600 XT. Probably not quite to 7800 XT, so 7700 XT, and that means it will be stronger than the B580. Now, the question becomes, where do they price it? But look, they're selling the 7600 XT for $320, $310 right now. I know they're making a profit on it. That's a 16 gigabyte card for $310. I believe the die size of Navi 44 is probably smaller than the 7600. So despite being 4 nanometer instead of 6, I don't think it's going to cost that much more to make than the 7600 XT. So I think they can easily do 300 to 350 and crush the B580. And then the cut down version, I just hope they don't do 8 gigabytes above 250. And frankly, I would say they just should not do 8 gigabytes, man. Unless, again, you call it like the 70 or the 8500 XT and it's $200. Then sure, it can have 8 gigabytes, I guess, even though I don't like it. But 8 gigabytes needs to be below 200 now, I think.
Oh yeah, easily. And is it hoping massively that for it to, even the big one, to be under 300, or is 300 almost certain? 300 to 350, I should say.
My guess is 300 to 350, or to 400 for the top one. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, but
if it's substantially, again, but if it's, 20, 30% faster than the 7600 XT, more efficient, actually can do ray tracing decently, that's a 30% price performance uplift gen over gen. That's what you expect.
Yeah, and if they come out with 3 cards or 4 cards for 550 to 600, 450, 350, and
whatever,
250 or 200, I think a lot of people will see that as a positive development, not having a $1,000 thing at the top of the screen.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is I have heard, and again, who knows, maybe I'll have an update before this comes out that will correct this, but that Navi 48's the focus. The big one's the focus. There might be 1 or 2 cards that launch in January, and that's it. Much like Nvidia with the 5060, AMD doesn't sound rushed to do the low-end cards. I think they should be more rushed now that Battle Mage is out, even if it's a fake card, but just for perception reasons. But if they still have a lot of 7600s lying around, you could see why they wouldn't rush that over just discounting those and trying to clear stock first.
It would be a pretty big marketing win, though, if they could upstage the 580 while it's still somewhat fresh on people's minds. So.
I agree. I agree. And, James Pryor, who was just on a Broken Silicon recently, he said he doesn't think it makes that much sense. But personally, he would love to see another one of those launches like the HD 7000 series, where it was like 7970 next week, 7950 next week, 7870, 7850, and even 7770 and 7750 over the course of a few months. Everything gets rolled out. I think that would be a big move if they did that. So I hope they do. Let's see here. Compressed AI Blocks writes in, how do you see DLSS versus FSR? Honestly, I thought FSR would be so aggressive when coming out and people would shift away from DLSS, but that is not the case. In fact, I'd argue DLSS has only gotten better and widened the gap further. I don't think that's true. I think people forget, I think people forget that right when FSR came out, DLSS was kind of made fun of, and that it wasn't until, especially mid DLSS 2, that it was like, oh, this is just always worth turning on. People keep forgetting that. The gap wasn't very big at first, just because DLSS sucked. But yes, will FSR close the gap, or do you think it'll always be behind DLSS? I wouldn't be surprised if it closes the gap, but look, Nvidia has more money and they're spending like crazy. So I think the gap will probably close over time. It's hard for me to see them tying DLSS in the next 4 years.
So for me, FSR 3 feels like felt like the first time that they were taking it somewhat seriously, and this wasn't, and it was a more full feature. Like FSR 2 was still usually good enough to be used in games that had it implemented, but FSR 3 is bigger, and FSR 4 feels like a full completion of a cycle. Like they're actually taking their software development seriously now,
and they're having Sony apparently work with them too, so that's good.
Yeah, so I think FSR 4 could make a lot of strides this generation. Now, DLSS will also probably make a lot of strides this generation. But I think both of them are going to be at a point where people that review them recommend both. But yeah, DLSS will still probably edge out FSR 4 at the end of the day.
Again, the point is, though, does it get to a area where it's 95% is good, and you're like, okay, sure, if it's the same price, I might want Nvidia, but I'm not paying 20% more.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get to the level of pixel counting is how we need to tell which one is better most of the time or all the time. But
some people argue it's already there. But
I mean, there were some very janky implementations of FSR.
I know, I'd say now, certainly not a year ago.
FSR now, though, I think is pretty good.
Barry Smith writes in, regarding RDNA 4 and FSR 4, I'd be most excited to see AMD's take on ray reconstruction and what that could do for RDNA GPUs, or even as a software feature in future consoles. Do you think AMD working on their version of ray reconstruction is a realistic expectation? Absolutely. And I don't know if this was submitted before the Project Amethyst thing was announced, but I think this is the thing Sony wants, is better synergy between upscaling and how the resulting ray tracing in that image looks. Absolutely, Sony's going to make them work on this, whether AMD wants to or not.
Yeah, will it make its way into this generation, I don't know, but I suspect that they would be working on that. I mean, AMD's usually trying to make competitor softwares to Nvidia whenever Nvidia has them, or technologies, I should say.
All right, so we've touched on most of the graphic stuff. Just rolling back here to the beginning of the script that we completely ignored for a while, but I do want to bring it up. I don't know how much we have to say about this. Strix Halo, I think we kind of talked about already. But what about Krackan, and what about Zen 5 X3D and the R5 9600? That should be coming out soon too. I mean, I don't know that much to say about budget Zen 5. Yeah, it'll be a little better than budget Zen 4, but like,
yeah, I think my thoughts with Krackan mostly pretty much begin and end there. Like, I expect it to be their next budget option, and their budget options are usually pretty good.
What about the 9950 X3D?
I'm very excited to see how the 9950 X3D and the 9900 X3D perform. I want to know, does the 9900 X3D continue to be the dumbest product AMD launches, or will it make some improvements? But X3D in general, yeah, that's I think why AMD is so dominant in gaming these days. So I don't think it will be that much better performance, or really any better performance than the 9800 X3D. But if there are two Vcache cores, maybe it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, two Vcache
I will say,
CCDs.
You know, and it does seem like there's a good chance it's just one CCD. If they do that, though, it just has to be perfect. They have to have the core parking and scheduling perfect. And if it is, there's not much to say. Look, it's just going to dominate, right?
Oh, yeah. The core parking has to come out without any kinks like it did last time.
Otherwise, it's like, what are we even bothering with here? AI Fish AI Wrangler writes, and it says, with the leaks that Krackan will be named the AI 7 and AMD's uncanny ability to call the end of fads, how soon do you think we're into another laptop lineup rebranding? My guess is 2 years. Yeah. I think after Medusa, they'll rebrand or something. I could be wrong, but
I was kind of just crossing my fingers that they throw it out
it's every
after
2
one
gens.
generation.
So I'm going to say 2 gens, not 2 years. 2 gens. They seem to have a thing and then do 1 to 3 gens. And so I think 2 gens after Zen 5, that might be the last time, and then they rebrand again. I could be wrong. I don't know if I hope I'm wrong, because I kind of hate the current naming scheme, but
or what if we grow to love AI 7 over the course of the next year, Tom?
Yes. What if we do? That'd be incredible.
What do you think the next fad they're going to predict the end of, Tom, is going to be?
Well, it's funny because, right, there was DNA, and then there was cloud, and then now there's AI. I don't know.
I don't know what the next bubble is.
Space, like just the outer space CPU for space travel for some reason, for space explorers.
Augmented reality.
Oh yeah, God, and that never quite happened. But God, imagine if it was VRDNA or RVR. Oh my God, that sounds so dumb. The RVR 5700 XT.
Now I'm kind of praying that's what
the
they
RVR,
do.
so we could just go RVR.
Yeah, AMD. I want to have to say RVR for the next 2 years.
RVR sounds like a word if you were like making me speak backwards. Be like, just RVR.
Yeah, it's. I think it's almost getting to Simlish.
Yes. All right. We've got that Zen 6 could launch at the end of next year, although my gut's starting to tell me CES, like why they don't have competition. But Trevor Renfro writes, and it says, hopefully Zen 6 and RDNA 5 will be good and not get delayed. I plan to upgrade my PC early 26. I'd say there's a chance Zen 6 is there, although I keep seeing this in the comments, like RDNA 5 is going to launch at the end of 2025. I doubt that. With RDNA 4 launching in the beginning. I mean,
I'd be shocked.
Yeah, so I don't know where this idea is coming from. Could it be early next year? Maybe, but my guess is mid 26 is probably where we see both of these at this point, except for maybe some specific APUs or something.
Yeah, AMD is more and more moving to a 2-year release cadence for CPU. Well, both, but I get the feeling that this is a shorter generation for a GPU just because this is there's no graphics or there's no high-end graphics card. So
but shorter doesn't mean end of next year.
Mid 26 makes sense for both of those, though.
Quick Jumper writes in, Tom, I think you mentioned that not all of the things or features are successfully implemented in Zen 5. I wonder what those improvements are. Will this mean Zen 6 will be even bigger improvement over Zen 5 than Zen 5 was over Zen 4? So the number one thing was the memory controller, that it sucked. And they I don't know if they were trying to make a new one and they just threw it out and went with the same one again. It's kind of what it seems like, actually. And I also know that like their ladder cache and the architecture just didn't deliver the IPC they were hoping for. So there's a couple of things that held them back. But again, if it's something that isn't like heavily influenced by the memory controller being updated or not, that's why you see some server workloads that they like double performance or something. So there are parts of the architecture that are still killing it. It's just, they didn't get quite the IPC uplift they were hoping. They were genuinely hoping for 30%, but it became clear that wasn't going to happen a year or two before launch. And the memory controller was botched. So I'm being told they're rebuilding just a basically grounds up new memory controller for Zen 6. So from that perspective, I think Zen 6 will have 10% more IPC at least, though that's less than what AMD claimed the IPC uplift is for Zen 5. But I'm going to say, if Zen 6 has a 10% IPC uplift, but that results in 8% higher performance per clock in gaming, I think Zen 6 will be perceived as better. Seems like from leaks we put out, that it might have 12 core CCDs, so 50% more cores, 10% better gaming performance. I think it's going to be thought of the same way we thought of Zen 2.
Especially if they don't have the completely unforced error of overpromising with the 9800X, or that'd be the 10800 or whatever they call it, X, for literally no reason. So everybody's disappointed on review day. I really do hope they lead with X3D next generation.
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows if that changes. I think AMD said in an interview, someone from AMD said recently, like, though our release cadence for X3D is about to change. And it's like, okay, so good. I don't know. We'll see. I think they're going to have 3 variants of Zen 6, probably just like Zen 7 will. And the way they're organizing the dies is different. So I'm not sure what to say about X3D. The paradigm for when you want it or how good it is, or like it might be a new way of doing it, might change. All right, let's see the remaining things we have here. So Zen 5 Threadripper. That is technically something that could come out late next year.
Or will Threadripper be neglected like it seems to be increasingly happen?
No, it should be coming out because I've seen rumors about it too. And I think there's rumors that they might actually give you Vcache on it on Threadripper. So I guess from that perspective, that might be awesome depending on the cost, actually.
But those are going to cost what? That would be like what, $4,000 probably?
What would make me excited is if there is a 24 or 32 core or even 16 core, all Vcache CCDs, and you can get it for under $2,000. We'll see. I mean, if it was 16 cores, cool. But even a 16 core, if it was all Vcache and quad channel memory, and you add that IO support, actually, I might get that. For my work, you wouldn't want it, but
no, I wouldn't. But I'm saying at that point, I think that could just also be the best or close to the best gaming CPU too.
So I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that Zen 5 Threadripper will be a bigger attempt at being good or should even say notable, like on consumers' radar. But I still doubt it's going to be what we wish it was. But I could be wrong because there are some rumors that are actually painting it fairly optimistically. But we always have those, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Yeah. All right. Well, then that leads us to the remaining Intel stuff. So there's Arrow Lake Mobile. I don't know anything to say about Arrow Lake Mobile. I mean, it will be better. It'll be a lot more efficient than Raptor Lake, probably.
My guess is Arrow Lake is fine on laptop.
Yeah.
That's really the most I have to say. They're not their power issues are better. I don't know. Arrow Lake's probably fine. Or Arrow Lake Mobile.
Yeah, relative to how desktop performed. We'll see. Certainly it's Intel. God knows what will actually happen. Panther Lake, I'm much more excited about.
Which one was Panther Lake again?
I mean, after Arrow Lake.
I think they could have one good generation in them. I don't know.
I mean, well, I don't know if you remember it all, but it's supposed to be like 5 to 10% higher IPC, 20% better performance, 30% maybe performance per efficiency. How do you see that competing though? 10% more. Let's say they get both. It's 10% more performance and it uses 30% less energy. Does that turn things around that much? I think in laptop it'll make a dent. I think on desktop, I mean, it's not going to beat Zen 5 in gaming.
No, but it might come close. And I could see that reality being like the i5 or the i7 are worth getting in gaming compared to a given AMD part, especially if the part that like the i5 is competing with is still like a 5700X 3D. Although at that point it might be like a 7600X 3D or something. But yeah, I think it could be competitive there. I don't think it's going to be the gaming king that people get over the 9800X 3D though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I guess because the big problem with Arrow Lake right now is that it's just the everything bad. Like it loses gaming, it trades blows in application performance. Sometimes it wins, sometimes it loses, depending on what it is. And then it has all these bugs. If the bugs are worked out, and then you add 10% performance and lower power more, I guess that does get you to a point though where at least on desktop, it would be beating most of Zen 5 across the board, but not X3D in gaming. And it would probably be the more efficient processor pretty clearly. And so I guess if they launch that and Zen 6 isn't out yet, it'll be okay. And it'll be like, I don't know what we would compare it to, but like, it'll be like, okay, this is an option. The question just is, will it be able to be priced competitively? Because I'm telling you, if Zen 6 isn't out by then, well, even if it is, even more so if it is, I think, Zen 5 is going to be cheap. I think even if it is just 10% better overall, 20% even than Zen 5. Yeah, but if there's like $450 16 cores, $350, and this isn't inconceivable. That's what happened to Zen 3. $350 12 cores. The 9800X 3D is like $350. I don't know. It's going to be hard for me to see how it makes a big dent, but it could at least make Intel viable again and help them out a lot in laptop, I think.
Yeah. It could at a minimum give them some breathing room as they work through their design problems. Because I'm very worried about what happens with Intel 2026 and beyond more than anything.
All right, what else do we got here? So then there's also Clearwater Forest with Darkmont. I don't have much to say. Clearwater Forest, I believe, will use Darkmont. So that's what's in Panther Lake. From what I've been told by sources, that's going to be single digits faster than Skymont, which is in Arrow Lake and Lunar Lake, which means, so you're looking at better than Raptor Lake, little cores and hundreds of them. Could be okay. We'll see. I don't know. I know that AMD will be about to release like 256 core Zen 6 Venice. Don't see how it's going to beat that. But what about Bartlett Lake? This was that thing that like the second it became clear Meteor Lake wasn't good and that Arrow Lake might not be good, everyone was freaking out because it's 12 P core Raptor Lake. I mean, Compressed AI Blocks writes in and says, will Bartlett Lake ever make its way to 1700 do-it-yourself? Honestly, it seems like 8 Raptor Cove cores would be their best bet for gaming. Sadly, or maybe 12. What were you going to say? You answer first.
I think this is just a thing people are really hoping will magically reinvigorate Intel, and I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a real widely released product. Like, I don't think there's going to be a DIY Bartlett Lake. I could be wrong, but
well, so I asked a source before we got on, like, hey, I haven't mentioned this in a while. Have you heard of Bartlett Lake just recently? And the person goes, yep. I'm like, okay, do you think it's coming to consumer? They're like, they think low and mid-range laptops will maybe get some Bartlett Lake.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'm like, what about desktop? No mention of it. So I don't know. It could come to desktop, but is anyone really going to care? I mean, I know the hyperventilating over Bartlett Lake, I think, and it's this thing we always see. People forget that time will pass. Yes, I know a year ago, before Zen 5 was out, a 12 P-core Raptor Lake launching would have been great. But it's not in 2024. It's going to be in 25. And when there's sub $200 5700X3Ds, you can get $50 AM4 motherboards a lot of the time now. You know, I saw the 9600X, I believe, is right around $250 on Amazon. The 9600 is coming out within a few months. It might be $200 if it isn't at launch. Like, are you really going out to build an LGA 1700 system or to upgrade your Alder Lake CPU to Bartlett Lake when you know you can maybe get by the end of the year like a 9800X 3D or something for, or like some of these things for like the price of the Zen 5 CPU and motherboard for the price of what this i9 will be? Because 10 nanometer isn't a cheap node. It's an expensive node. Intel's going out of business because they're stuck with 10 nanometer, which is an inefficient, expensive node that costs too much to make. Like, so who's buying this $500 or even $400 12 core i9 when they could get a $400 9900X with like 32 gigabytes of RAM for free at Micro Center with, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, it really just feels like
if it was $350, sure, upgrade from Alder Lake to this. But if it's anything else,
yeah, it really feels to me like some people, the message they've internalized about why Intel CPUs suck lately is because E-core is bad. So therefore, if we remove all the E-cores, it will be good. And I don't think that's how things work.
I mean, it could be, but it would have to be, give me 12 Panther Lake P-cores.
Yeah,
I don't want, you know.
Sure, that might be good.
But like we're wrapped Alder Lake plus being sold in 25. No, I don't. It doesn't excite me.
No.
All right. Final question here, everybody. James Railton writes in and says, will 2025 be the year when we see LLMs and natural sounding text to speech being used for NPCs? Can GPUs properly multitask between rendering and running an LLM? Not. They can. A powerful one can, yeah. But will AMD's poor LLM performance hold back gaming? No, because I think there will be an indie game with this. It's not going to be a bunch of AAA games, but I think indie, yeah.
Next year?
I think there will be a indie game.
Okay.
An hour long that lets you do this.
True.
I mean,
yeah, that's fair to say. I mean, I guess they have all of those AI chatbots now. If somebody implementing that into a form of a game, sure, that's possible. I think next generation you're going to see this a decent amount, though.
Oh, yeah. PS6, next Xbox. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Mark Cerny basically said it. You know,
yeah, insinuated by Mark Cerny, it will be a thing.
Yeah, to bring it all full circle here. All right. Well, I mean, that's the looking forward episode. We got through, as far as I can tell, everything we wanted to. We certainly hope that everybody is preparing to have a fun New Year's Eve and New Year's overall. I don't know, Dan. Any final thoughts for the new year? I have a closing thing. I'll do it. I think, and it's something I think I said on the David episode. I just want to reiterate it. I don't know if it's going to be 2025 or if it's going to be 2026, but I think at the minimum over the next 3 years, all of this negativity about Intel having issues, Microsoft, Xbox having issues, and like, oh, there's no competition. Just you wait. Apple has the M4 Mini, and it's actually competitively priced for the performance. I mean, Steam's making a console. Nvidia's making CPUs. Qualcomm's got a second gen coming. MediaTek's making their own APUs as well, it sounds like, in addition to partnering with Nvidia, kind of sounds like to me. PlayStation's making a handheld to compete with the Switch. The Switch might actually run AAA games. And Lenovo's making a SteamOS console. And all these mini PC companies are like going to be able to use SteamOS or Windows. And just you wait. Competition isn't going anywhere because we're not pretending Battle Mage is the second coming of Christ, everybody. Like, competition's coming. The power vacuums will be filled. Just you wait. I'm not worried about competition. I just don't know if it's going to go crazy in 6 or 2025, but it's coming, and I think we're going to at least see the tremors of it next year.
I mean, I think we're going to see a very good chance we're going to see at least two ARM CPUs come out from two different companies. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of crap, but some of it might be really good. So let's hope let's hope there is one good new entrant into the market as Intel is getting
There's room. It's rumored that
weak.
ARM is going to make dedicated graphics cards too.
No,
you wait. It's been rumored for a long time, but you wait. I don't know if it's next year or 26. Competition's coming. There's going to be more competition. There's going to be.
Oh yeah.
All right. So on that note, I think we can close this episode. Thank you again, everybody, for supporting us through 2024. We hope you'll continue to support us through 2025. Join the Patreon, people. Get access to the die shrink that just came out. Get access to the back catalog. Be able to ask us questions. Talk about this in the Discord. We cannot do this without our patrons. Yeah, just thank you in general, everyone who watches. It's incredible how much we continue to grow. We're almost to 200,000. I never thought we'd get to 100. I don't even know if I thought we'd get to 50.
I'm trying to remember where we were like back in 2020.
Beginning of the year, 10,000.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
20,000. Beginning of the year, 20,000. I think
that was a pretty big growth year, and I remember like seeing things like, oh, we're at 50,000. That felt nuts. 100,000 felt nuts. 130,000 felt nuts. 200 is crazy.
Yeah. So, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you for helping us. Thank you for supporting us. And thank you for just, supporting content that you like. Because, that is what makes us keep doing it. So I'm going to start rambling as I am obviously exhausted. I have to go make dinner now. But we will be right back, with another episode in a week. I'm having on a developer to talk about what it's like working on Battle Mage and stuff. So already great content coming very soon. Make sure you're a patron so you can ask that guest questions. And have a great New Year's, everybody.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, If you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, GC Ziggy, MJB1, Esenias Chalmers, Jem Ferriero, Toka, Falcon Malev, Jensen Wayne, Gregorius Acker, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Compressed AI Blocks, Halbuma, Shredbird, Holden Mobley, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, Julian Link, The Boss Haas, Jonathan, Chrysanthine, Franco Frederick, Jake223, Jake Martin, Slicky, Nithra Zink, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zoot Taylor, Stephen Coates, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cakes, Gamers Unite, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, Jamie Witters, I Should, Mark Raidmaker, James Anderson, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Mai Sharona, Reginald Ari, Tika Autumn, Win Wang, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Raider, Little Germany, GSMMH, Shay, Milton, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Taffy, Stephen Dick, Dave Schultz, Austin Haggerty, Justin Bustle, Jofit, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Jansen, Angima, Joseph Kelly, Sleshbaugh, Him, Sagung, Tails, 2299, Meal Valverga, Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, Brian Wright, RB Racer, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Free D, Michael Cozy, John Swin, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Jeffrey, Jeneman, Kikum, Solarize 80, Matthew Marlowe, Brian P, Sprutnik, Whodat42, Heguk, Cornster 671, Penta Wenta, Hal Richard, Omega Doge, Angel of Cake, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Porcelain Olds, Curry King, Nick Zuzmania, Sakosha, State Farm Snake, Armand Vacatura, Rai Hill Chi Bowles, and Kevin Kuntz. And of course, thank you to Sahara for the music, and have a great holiday season, everybody.